So we're going to continue talking about how species interact with one another, and we left off discussing predator-prey relationships and how predators can hunt for species and how prey cope with predators and try to escape being hunted. So I've already covered the fact that they can run or swim or fly fast. They might have highly developed senses of sight, hearing, and smell. They may have actual physical protection like a hard shell or thick bark or spines, and they might use camouflage as indicated in a couple of these pictures here. And the items across the middle actually employ poison to ward off predators, including the duck-billed platypus. So one thing that is definitely apparent is the camouflage prey species tend to not be as brilliantly colored as those species that use poison, with the exception of the stonefish and the platypus. Normally, warning coloration is used to warn predators that there is a toxin or poison that the predator would be in danger if it ate that specific prey. So the prey has a bright, colorful appearance to make the poisonous or deadly defensive properties clear to the predator. The term associated with this is aposematic coloration. Some species use mimicry to basically resemble another organism in order to deceive a third. So mimicry is when one organism mimics or closely resembles another organism in order to deceive the third. The model and the mimic are not always closely related, but they both usually live in the same area. It's somewhat similar to camouflage, but in mimicry, the model is generally a similar organism rather than a static part of the background when species do camouflage. Batesian mimicry occurs when an edible mimic resembles an unpalatable or poisonous model. Only the mimic is benefiting from this. So a good example of this would be the scarlet king snake, a non-poisonous mimic of the extremely venomous coral snake. Just remember, red and black, venom lack. This is the king snake. Red and black, venom lack. While red and yellow, kill a fellow, i.e. the coral snake. See how red is directly next to the yellow on the coral snake? So basically the king snake is mimicking the coral snake, and it's being protected because predator species know to stay away from the coral snake colors. There's also certain subspecies of milk snakes in the United States that also mimic the venomous coral snake as well. Müllerian mimicry occurs when two or more distasteful or poisonous organisms resemble each other. Both species benefit because a predator who learns to avoid one species will also likely avoid the other. Using another food example, imagine a bowl full of M&Ms. You reach in and grab a red one, and to your dismay you realize it's a Reese's Pieces. Really wanting an M&M, you grab another red one and discover again it's a Skittle. It's not what you wanted. Realizing someone must have played a crucial trick on you, you ignore the red ones and pick up a green one, which is an M&M. So just a quick little fun example there. The monarch butterfly and the viceroy butterflies were believed to exhibit Batesian mimicry for a really long time. However, the monarch was thought to be the harmful one. It's recently been discovered that the viceroy is actually just as unpalatable as the monarch, and sometimes even more. Thus, the monarch and the viceroy butterfly now exhibit what's known as Müllerian mimicry. And here's a picture of the monarch butterfly. Deceptive looks or automimicry occurs when a single organism or one part of that organism's body resembles another part, like in a number of snake species that have tails that resemble their heads, or maybe even move backward when threatened. By doing this, they can trick predators to go after their tails rather than their heads and avoid fatal attacks. In this picture, a four-eyed butterfly fish uses a deceptive marking. The large spot near the tail resembles an eye. When predators attack the wrong end, the butterfly fish can swim away in the other direction and get away. Another example of this is the owl butterfly. It has two large spots resembling the appearance of owl eyes, and it scares off bird predators. The owl butterfly lives in rainforests and can be as wide as 8 inches from wing to wing. Deceptive behavior is another technique that prey will use in order to ward off predators, such as scaring off the predator or puffing up or spreading its wings. It might even mimic a predator, or it could live in a large school, such as large schools of fish, to ward off predators. One example of this, and I challenge you to look up the picture of it, is the Hermoplanes caterpillar, also known as a snake caterpillar. It has the ability to put on a snake-like disguise in a moment's notice if it feels threatened. The caterpillar does a great job of mimicking snake behavior as well. It actually throws itself backward and twists to reveal its underside, which is hidden when the caterpillars are at rest. The anterior part of the body, segments of the caterpillar, inflate to form a diamond-shaped head, which actually looks like the eyes of a snake, and it basically tricks the predator in knowing what it is. There are 2 rules of thumb for evaluating danger posed by brightly colored animal species. The first one is, if they are small and strikingly beautiful, they're probably poisonous. The second one is, if they are strikingly beautiful and easy to catch, they're probably deadly. So watch out for species that are brightly colored. Another way in which species interact with one another is parasitism. Parasitism is defined as a species feeding off another species by living on them or inside them. A parasite is usually much smaller than its host, and rarely does it kill the host. Parasites can live inside the host, such as tapeworms, and others can actually attach them to the outside of the host, like the sea lamprey. The first one pictured in the top left is the eyeworm. This larva of a nematode infects the human eye when flies bite the people. The adult is known to travel through the body's tissues for years. They are most common in West and Central Africa. The common symptom includes itching and swelling. For the very unlucky victim, they even can damage the brain. The worm becomes apparent only when they reach the eye. There they can easily be seen, and to the horror of the victim, it's even felt as it squirms around the soft tissue beneath the cornea. The only way to get this worm removed is by using a local anesthetic. The next picture is of the dragon worm. It's commonly known as the guinea worm, or the little dragon in Latin, known as Dracunculus. A person gets infected while drinking water that's contaminated with tiny water fleas that are already infected with the larva. Once it makes its way into the body, the spaghetti-like female worm grows to up to 1 meter long and emerges through the skin, usually from the legs or feet, resulting in immense pain. The pain lasts for weeks, and there are no vaccines to prevent this from disease. The only way to get this worm out of the body is to gradually wrap the worm around a stick as it comes out. The zombie wasp. This wasp actually preys on cockroaches. The female wasp stings into the brain of the cockroach and disables the cockroach from escaping. The female wasp then leads the cockroach back to her underground nest, lays her eggs on the belly, and seals the eggs. The larvae hatch and burrow themselves into the body of the cockroach, where they then devour the insect from the inside out and form a cocoon. Later they emerge out of the insect's body as a new adult. The tongue-eating sea louse, as depicted here. This is one unique parasite that not only eats its host body parts, but also replaces entirely everything that it has eaten. The sea louse makes its house inside the mouth of a fish, and it feeds on the blood from the tongue until the organ withers away. The parasite then very cleverly attaches itself to the remaining stump of the tongue and continues to feed on the blood and mucus in the mouth. It may seem as a consolation that the fish can still use the louse exactly as its own tongue, but this is a very weird parasitic relationship. This very small eel-like looking vampire fish is found in the Amazon. It feeds on other fishes by swimming into the gills of the other fish and feasting on their blood. It can even prey on humans as well by entering through the rear, and it lodges itself using backwards facing spines. It often bloats on its blood meal and dies there. Often the only way to remove it is through surgery. So this is basically a fish that has the parasite inside it. You can see the size of the parasite. A different form of parasitism is called brood parasitism. It's practiced by species of cuckoos and cowbirds. These birds don't build their own nests, but instead they deposit their eggs in the nest of other species and abandon the egg there, with the hope that the adult bird of the other species will raise the abandoned young as their own. The cowbird's parasitism doesn't necessarily harm the host or the host's brood. However, the cuckoo may actually remove one or more host eggs to reduce the suspicion of surrounding the presence of its own egg. And the young cuckoo may actually heave the host eggs and nestlings from the nest in order that they survive. So here's an example of brood parasitism with a cuckoo egg being laid with the other bird's eggs. Mutualism is when species interact with each other and they both benefit. They may provide each other with food, shelter, protection, or some other resources. There are two types of mutualism: obligate mutualism and facultative mutualism. Obligate mutualism is when the species involved are in close proximity and are independent with one another in a way that one cannot survive without the other. Facultative mutualism is when the interacting of species derive benefit from each other, but not fully dependent so that one can't survive without the other partner. So examples are birds that ride on the backs of large animals and remove pests, bacteria that live in our intestines and help us digest foods. This is a picture of ants that live on this plant. The ants get nectar from the plant itself, and then the plant is protected by the ants. Here's a picture of a bee, and it's pollinating a flower. The bee gains nectar from the flower for survival, and then the flower basically allows pollen to be attracted to the body of the bee, so the bee can help carry the pollen to other flowers and help do pollination. So both organisms are living together to benefit from each other and their existence. This is a picture of a spider crab, and the algae as well are together in a mutualistic relationship. Spider crabs live in shallow areas on the ocean floor, and this greenish-brown algae lives on the crabs' backs, making the crabs blend in with their environment and helps them to become unnoticeable to predators. The algae gets a good place to live, and the crab gets camouflaged. Another example of this is between the sea anemone and the clownfish. The anemone travels with the fish en route to its destination, and the fish remains unharmed. Sea anemones are a predatory animal that belong to the phylum of coral and jellyfish. They kill their prey with poisonous cells on their tentacles. There's about 1,000 different species of sea anemones, but only 10% have a mutualistic relationship with the clownfish. Not all clownfish are compatible with sea anemones. Hence, certain species of clownfish pair up with certain species of sea anemones. The clownfish actually cleans the anemone and provides nutrients in the form of the waste that it excretes. It also scares away predatory fish such as the butterfly fish. So, the sea anemone is providing shelter for the clownfish, and the clownfish helps clean the sea anemone and keep predators away. These are pictures of commensalism, and I'll go through these pretty quickly. Commensalism occurs when one species benefits from the interaction and the other one is not impacted at all. So, some examples: the air plants on trees depicted here. These are called epiphytes. They attach themselves to the trunks or branches of large trees to access sunlight. The trees aren't impacted at all, but the plants are benefiting. Here we have a remora that is floating alongside the shark. The remora doesn't impact the shark at all. It just attaches to the shark with an oval sucking disc structure in its mouth, but remoras will feed off the waste food from the shark itself. Here's barnacles on a whale. Barnacles are a type of crustacean that are typically sedentary and they can't move on their own, but by attaching to the whale moves throughout the waters and the barnacles then feed as the whale is traveling. And here we have pictures of oxpeckers that eat the insects around various grazing animals.